Okay, we're back, and on this anniversary date of Roe versus Wade, a significant day in the history of the United States, it's hard to believe that 43 years ago our country made a decision to kill the innocent. I thought that Pastor Greg Spires last night gave an incredible theological snapshot of history of how we went from being civilized to killing babies. And it does go back all the way into the Old Testament and clearly into Israel's history as well. But we're doing it, and we're doing it in vast numbers. 50, some say 50 million, some say 64, as high as 64 million babies never saw the light of day as a result of Roe versus Wade. Now, the big argument is, when does life begin? And I thought that our good friend, Dr. Gene Getz, he's the editor of the Life Essentials Study Bible. Last week we talked to him briefly about this particular issue. And he went to Luke chapter 1, which is an interesting chapter because that is when Jesus was conceived. You go to Luke chapter 2 and it deals with the birth of Jesus, and that's what is mostly recognized, especially during the Christmas season. But Luke chapter 1, there is a little story in there that is very, very powerful as it relates to when does life begin. Join me now as we talk to Dr. Gene Getz. In fact, today, it couldn't be more timely to have Gene on today because I want to deal with the one found in the Gospel of Luke, and it deals with the principle of life as we now head towards next week, which will be the 43rd anniversary of Roe versus Wade. So, Gene, take us through this.
Well, I think this passage here in Luke, Perry, is probably one of the most, it's so powerful in terms of the fact that life begins at conception. And basically what we have here is the conception of two individuals. One is John the Baptist, Elizabeth giving birth to him, and then Mary actually being conceived, John the Baptist conceived, and then you have the conception of Jesus. Now, in both situations, there's an element of the natural. For Elizabeth, of course, it was, in a sense, a miracle, but it was natural. She had a husband, they conceived, and John the Baptist was conceived. Well, of course, the angel appeared to Mary and told her that her birth or her conception was going to be certainly supernatural. She was going to become pregnant by the Holy Spirit. But the fact of the matter is that you also have in here an element of the natural. You have both the supernatural and the natural. In that Jesus grew and went through all the stages of prenatal development, and then he was born, and Luke says that he increased in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. So you have the miracle of the incarnation. But this passage deals with the fact that even in the womb, there was communication between Jesus and John the Baptist. And you can't ignore the natural in this as well as the supernatural. In fact, the passage, it says, when Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, Elizabeth went to see Mary. And this is right after Mary had conceived. I mean, this is in the opening days of her conception. It says the baby, and that's John the Baptist, who was, by the way, in the 6th month, he's going into his trimester, second trimester, leaped inside her, that is Elizabeth, and she was filled with the Holy Spirit, and then she exclaimed with a loud cry, "You, Mary, are the most blessed of women, and your child," and there she's referring to Jesus already as a child, "will be blessed. How could this happen to me, that the mother of my Lord, already the mother of my Lord, should come to me? For you see, when the sound of your greeting reached my ears, the baby," that is John the Baptist, at 6 months, "leaped inside me." In other words, there was communication between Jesus, who was conceived in the womb, just a few days, is communicating with John, who is in his going into his second trimester. There's life in the womb. And here it's so beautifully illustrated in relationship to when life begins. It begins at conception. And of course, Perry, there are other passages of Scripture we can bring to bear upon that, from Job, from David, and others that affirm that life begins at conception. And it's an exciting passage. So the principle that I wrote here was basically, in a day when people are taught that the unborn are not living beings, we must do what we can to expose this terrible deception with biblical truth.
Gene, that is so beautifully said. And again, it is illustrated again through the QR code that Gene has at this particular principle in the Gospel of Luke. And if you have a QR reader on your phone or your tablet, you can run it over there. And what he just said, he pops up in a video and gives it to you in that Bible principle. I thought what Dr. Gene Getz has done there is very clearly shown one thing. This is a spiritual battle in America. And I want to say to pastors and to folks in churches, I would really hope and pray for those who feel that this is a political issue, that you would seriously and prayerfully reconsider that. It's not a political issue. It is a spiritual issue. And coming up in the state of Oregon in March, we'll have an opportunity to stop our tax dollars for paying for anywhere between 8 and 9 abortions a day. Can you imagine that? Our silence, our do-nothingness, is allowing 8 to 9 babies a day to be killed through abortion in the state of Oregon. How can God possibly bless us if we allow this to happen? And so a new petition drive will be coming out in the next several weeks that will put on the ballot a measure that will take our state constitution and not allow our tax dollars to be used to pay for abortion in the state of Oregon. That's not political. That is totally spiritual. And pastors, if you and your board are uncomfortable with this, let me encourage you to consider this. Allow somebody in your church who is passionate about this issue to be your point person. Gathering signatures in your church is totally legal. Totally legal. And therefore, it's not political. And especially on the basis of what Dr. Gene Getz just shared with us, this is a spiritual issue. Of everything that God created, He only created man in His own likeness and His own image. And Jesus said, I come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. The devil comes to steal and to destroy and to kill. And right now, his agenda is being fulfilled in numbers that are unacceptable and should never be allowed by the killing of so many innocent babies. We as the faith community must rise up and stop this. We must do this. And I'm asking pastors and lay people, and if you sit on a church board, would you do yourself a favor? Just take some time and get alone with God and ask Him what you should do about this issue. And reconsider your position in your church to allow these petitions to be circulated and to get signatures. When you pull back the whole argument of Roe versus Wade, you're going to discover something that is quite shocking. And that is, the person from which this decision came now realizes not only her mistake, but the whole premise by which Roe versus Wade was appealed to the Supreme Court was done so on a lie. And so let's talk to the Roe of Roe versus Wade.
Most of you won't recognize me or my real name. It's Norma McCorvey. I'm also known as Jane Roe, the plaintiff in the Supreme Court case, Roe versus Wade, which legalized abortion in America and changed our nation in an unprecedented way. Back in 1973, I was a very confused 21-year-old with one child and facing an unplanned pregnancy. At the time, I fought to obtain a legal abortion, but the truth be told, I have 3 daughters and have never had an abortion. However, upon knowing God, I realized that my case, which legalized abortion on demand, was the biggest mistake of my life. You see, abortion has eliminated 50 million innocent babies in the U.S. alone since 1973. Abortion scars an untold number of post-abortive mothers, fathers, and families too. You read about me in history books, but now I'm dedicated to spreading the truth about preserving the dignity of all human life, from natural conception to natural death.
Well, there you go. And that is Jane McCorvey, who is the plaintiff, as she said there, in the Roe versus Wade decision at the Supreme Court in 1973. I also want to say, before we take a break here, I want to say thank you to our Catholic friends and the Catholic Church that has put the full weight of the church and their money behind this argument. Quite frankly, if it wasn't for the Catholic Church standing on the side of life, the numbers that we're dealing with today would be significantly worse. They have put their money and their doctrine behind the life issue, and they have fought hard to stay pure on the side of life, not only through their churches and their dioceses, but also through their colleges and universities, and they need to be commended. And at the same time, we evangelicals, we need to lock arms with our Catholic brothers and sisters in fighting this issue, and a lot of other faiths who stand on the side of life. This is a common issue to bring us together, and I hope that we would consider. But folks, before us in the state of Oregon, we're going to have an opportunity again to have a major impact on saving lives, and I would hope that we as people of faith will take serious that this opportunity in our lifetime to turn things around should be taken advantage of, and get it done by signing these petitions and stopping our tax dollars from paying for abortions in the state of Oregon. Well, coming up in just a few moments, we have another video that we're going to share with you that shows you what has happened with the whole life issue from 1973 to where we are today. It's pretty powerful. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Welcome back, and what we're doing today is certainly recognizing what this day really is and how it has changed the course of America. 43 years ago today, the Supreme Court ruled to make abortions illegal, or make it legal in the United States. And since that time, somewhere between 50 and maybe as high as 64 million babies have been killed through abortion. And I think that Pastor Greg Spires last night asked the most pronounced and profound question ever. Why? Why are we killing babies? And what has happened since 1973 to today is very significant. The late Pope John Paul said at the height of the abortion debate that if we don't stop this, that the spirit of death would be unleashed across the world. Well, shortly after he gave that speech, we begin to hear a word in our society. At the time, we really didn't know what it meant. The word was terrorism. And today, we are watching videos of Christians having their heads cut off, and people who won't convert to a certain philosophy or religion having their heads cut off, including women and including children. And we have become immune to it. Then we watched a series of videos of what goes on in an abortion clinic in Planned Parenthood, and how babies are pulled apart limb by limb and sold as a commodity on the market to raise money so that people can live a fabulous lifestyle, and that have that money go into the political system and pay for favor with politicians. Just a couple of weeks ago, our Congress passed the spending bill that included funding Planned Parenthood for a whole year at its full funding, in light of all of those videos they still passed that bill. Now, they will tell you when you call their offices that this was a win-win because we got this and we got that, and we got all of these other things in the bill. But also, we opened the door to continue the killing of babies in this country. So they put politics over principle. 150 Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives voted for that bill. I encourage you to go online and find out what your congressman did and how he voted. And to protect their conscience and their political maneuvering, they have since come out with a bill to defund Planned Parenthood, after they passed a bill to fund it for a year and give the president everything they want, knowing that if they passed another bill to defund Planned Parenthood, it would just get vetoed. It's hypocrisy to the max, and you may want to check that out. But what has happened since 1973 until today? For those listening on the radio, listen carefully. You will be impacted. For those watching on television, take a look at this.
Good evening. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions. Thus, the anti-abortion laws of 46 states were rendered unconstitutional.
I was born in 1973. In that year, the Supreme Court struck down a Texas law that protected the unborn. This decision makes abortion legal in all 50 states throughout all of pregnancy for any reason. Its name, Roe v. Wade.
In 1974, 20,000 pro-life activists marched on the United States Capitol. This is the first of what will become the annual March for Life.
In 1975, the year I was born, the first human life amendment is introduced into the U.S. Senate. The amendment fails.
In 1976, the Republican Party adopts a pro-life platform. The Democratic Party, not so much.
By 1977, the number of yearly abortions in America passes 1 million.
In 1978, the Chicago Sun-Times runs a series of articles exposing unsanitary conditions, unlicensed personnel, and inadequate anesthesia in abortion facilities.
Abortion safety regulations are overturned by the courts. In 1980, the Supreme Court upholds a federal ban on tax-funded abortions, one of our first national victories.
Pregnant minors can have an abortion without parental notification.
The RU-486 abortion pill is tested on women.
Abortion provider Carol Everett leaves the abortion industry. She later writes the book Blood Money, exposing abortion industry abuses, including botched abortions, which kill and maim mothers.
In 1984, there were 1.5 million abortions, double what they were in 1973.
In 1985, parental notification fails to pass in Texas. Operation Rescue organizes sit-ins and other acts of civil disobedience around the country. Tens of thousands of pro-life activists are arrested.
In 1987, the number of abortions in America continued to rise.
In 1988, while in the womb, my mother has an abortion that kills my twin sibling. I survive.
1989, no pro-life legislation passes. Again. In 1990, the year I was born, the number of abortions in America reaches an all-time high.
In 1991, the total number of abortions in the U.S. rises above 26 million. This means more aborted babies than the number of people living in Iowa, Colorado, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Tennessee combined.
In 1992, the United States Supreme Court reaffirms Roe v. Wade.
In 1993, the Clinton administration gives $75 million to Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider in America.
In 1994, Norma McCorvey, the Jane Roe in Roe v. Wade, converts into a pro-life champion.
1995, Congress passes the partial birth abortion ban.
1996, Clinton vetoes the partial birth abortion ban.
Congress passes and Clinton vetoes the partial birth abortion ban. Again.
Throughout the 90s, crisis pregnancy centers pop up all over the country, providing women with compassionate alternatives to abortion.
In 1999, Texas legislature passes the Parental Notification Act, the first major pro-life victory in Texas, and we are just getting started.
In 2000, the year I was born, the FDA approves the RU-486 abortion pill.
In 2001, abortions on minor girls decline. Parental involvement rises.
2002, Texas Supreme Court upholds ban on tax-funded abortions.
Congress passes the partial birth abortion ban again. This time, President Bush signs it into law. The pro-life Aggies start the first 4 days to life in College Station, Texas. 2005, parental consent passes. Late-term abortions plummet 80%. In 2007, the U.S. Supreme Court upholds partial birth abortion ban. The Texas Prenatal Protection Act survives a court challenge. Planned Parenthood Director Abby Johnson quits and now stands pro-life. Sonic Lamar.
What will the future hold? Laws that protect women and babies from the horrors of abortion. A culture that values life from conception through natural death.
My generation will end abortion.
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 My generation.
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 My generation will end abortion.
Well, I got to tell you, I hope in my generation as well that we end abortion. Perhaps at one level or another, you have been impacted by abortion, and it's in your family. You've been impacted by it. How do you feel clean, and can you ever feel clean from it? Pastor Bill Gallagher is with us, and we're going to talk about that next when we come back here on the Dove.